How does soil health impact you, and why should you care about it? Join me today as we look at the food chain in the way that I imagine it and talk a little bit about what goes into healthy soil, a little bit, but why soil is important and how the health of our soil impacts the health of everything in the food chain above it. Now, my beautiful wife has designed this pictograph that illustrates what I'll be teaching. So we'll be taking a look at that. So I invite you to join me as we look at the food chain and how healthy soil impacts everything so that hopefully you can, number one, understand how it is impacting you and how it could impact your life differently if we change our soils, or if we simply eat food that was grown in healthy soils. So let's take a look at that pictograph and let's go through the process. Welcome to BioReGenesis. We are on a mission to help regenerate and renew life and health on Earth, the life and health of everything from the soil to the soul. We draw from the wisdom of the ancient scriptures, particularly from the story of creation in Genesis. Guided by the principles demonstrated in nature, we explore ways to restore balance, resilience, and abundance in all we do. Our mission can be summarized in this statement: let there be life. Our guiding theory is this: nature will always win. Are you working with nature or against it? Join us as we uncover timeless truths, practical solutions, and a renewed vision for harmony between creation and stewardship. Subscribe now and be part of the movement. All right, here we are. This is the food chain as I envision it, more like a ladder than chains in or links in a chain. Here you have soil down here. Now, if this is healthy soil, what happens is that the microbiology, the macrobiology are working in the soil to break down nutrients and make them plant available, or bioavailable to the plant is a better way of putting it. Now, as the healthy soil has that life going on in it, it allows nutrients to be taken up through the soil and into the plants. Now, as these plants grow, they basically have these healthy building blocks of nutrients. The nutrients don't give the plants energy per se. The plants get their energy from the sun, which is up here, and from the atmosphere as well. So the plants are getting their energy through the photosynthesis process. Basically, they're encapsulating sunlight into carbon, a carbon molecule, and that's the energy that drives them as well as everything above them in the food chain. What they are doing is using nutrients from the soil as well as the atmosphere, and they're using that as building blocks for them to build their plant matter. Now, of a plant's composition, 80% of that is water. So you see why water over here is so incredibly important. Not only water in the soil, but also in the atmosphere. Now, of the remaining 20% of a plant's dry weight, after you've taken the water out, 97% of the nutrients that compose that dry weight is actually from the atmosphere in some form or other. It may come up through the roots, but it's found in the atmosphere. Only 3% of the nutrients found in a plant actually come from the soil. And that's a very, very key distinction, because we've been taught that we have to put tons of fertilizer on the soil so that it has enough nutrients. That's not actually how nature does it. Nature takes a lot of the nutrients from the atmosphere through soil respiration, and that's basically what that is oxygen, I should say air, atmosphere moving into the soil and then breathing back out. And the microbiology is very, very key to soil respiration. So if you have compacted soils or soils where the microbiology has been killed, you don't get that soil respiration. So the atmosphere is not moving into the soil and back out again as it should in a healthy soil. That means that you're not getting as many nutrients in there. Now, it is possible to fertilize the plants, and I say fertilize the plants rather than the soil, because what you're doing in that situation is you are feeding the plants directly. So you're going from nutrients directly into the plant. And typically the way that our fertilizers work is that it uses salt with what we call osmotic pressure to force those nutrients into the plants. However, the plants can uptake those nutrients through the osmotic pressure, but it doesn't give them the choice of nutrients. In a healthy soil, you've got microbiology that is actually communicating with the plant and living symbiotically with the plant, so that the plant creates sugars through the photosynthesis process, sends them down into the roots, and feeds the microbiology. In return, the microbiology, which is basically like the stomach of the soil, it is releasing acids and enzymes into the soil and then drawing in nutrients to feed it and exchanging that with the plants for these what we call root exudates or sugars that are being fed to the microbiology. If we use high salt fertilizers, we are actually killing this microbiology at worst, or at best putting it to sleep, because the microbiology says, oh, this plant doesn't need any nitrogen, for instance, or phosphorus or potassium because there's so much available. I'm just going to go to sleep. And when they do that, they don't reproduce, they don't continue doing their job. Therefore, the plants are forced to take up these nutrients, and they don't have that symbiotic relationship with the microbiology, so the plants can't ask those little microbes, which are workers, they can't ask them for specific nutrients, like, I need this much iron. I'll give you this much sugar in exchange for that much iron. That's how I envision it. So the plants are forced to take up the nutrients that we provide in these high salt chemical fertilizers, and they aren't able to take up all the different ones. Now, when it comes to nutrients, I like to liken nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. That's the big three that we see on fertilizer bags. NPK, right? The first number is nitrogen. The second one is usually potash, not true phosphorus. I'll explain that in another video. And then phosphate, which is not true phosphorus. But they provide those three, and I like to liken them to nitrogen being the foundation, phosphorus being the walls, and potassium being the roof of the plants. Those are the building blocks that are given to the plant, and it makes a plant. You have the rough structure. However, you have a bunch of other nutrients that are needed as well. Now, calcium is very, very basic, and there is calcium available. Typically we have a fair bit of calcium in our soils. Now, calcium is another big one, and I would say that's more like the shingles on the roof maybe, or something like that. It is there and it provides some, but if you don't have enough calcium, the roof begins to leak, which basically begins to weaken the structure of the plant. Another huge one that very few people look at is silica. Silica is actually very, very common in our soils. And unfortunately, most plants nowadays are deficient in silica. Silica helps to thicken the walls. So you might think of that as insulation in the walls to help protect the core of this plant, right? The reason that silica is not bioavailable is because we've been killing off this microbiology. It's not surviving, so it's not making silica bioavailable. Now, there are ways to put silica on as a foliar application and get it into the plant. But that's kind of silly because sandy soils are actually made up of 70 to 90% silica. There is plenty of silica in our soil, it's just not bioavailable. Now, what happens with the high salt chemical fertilizers is the plant can't ask for all the other nutrients. Typical soil has up to 40 different nutrients in it, and most of those we don't even look at. A typical soil sample will have 12 different nutrients that we look at. Many people don't even look at those 12 when they look at a soil sample, if they even look at a soil sample. They look at the top 3, NPK. That gets you a shack. It does not get you a house. There are so many other components to a good, solid house. You know, you have the electrical, the plumbing, you have the finish, you have drywall and baseboard and, you know, finish nails and so many other things. And that's where those other nutrients come in. Now, fascinatingly enough, ocean water has 90 different nutrients in it. And we found that when we put ocean water or something that grows in the ocean on soils and give the plants the choice of all those different nutrients with healthy biology, the plant creates this super, super healthy plant. It's like a house that is completely finished. It's got the windows in there, it's got the siding, it's waterproofed, it's caulked, and it's fully functioning, and that plant is super healthy. Now, most people don't know that, and so what they do is they try to keep their shack standing by protecting it from invaders, pests and diseases. So they use insecticides. They even use herbicides to keep the subdivisions from crowding out and making their plant look bad. That's a bad analogy, but you get the concept, right? So they use herbicides to kill weeds because the plant isn't strong enough to beat out the competition. Because honestly, the soil is more well suited to grow weeds, what we know as weeds. They're simply plants that grow well in bad conditions, and we dislike it. But if you have a super healthy, strong plant with growing in healthy soil, that plant is better suited to that soil than the plants that we call weeds. Now, let's think about how that impacts everything. If you have a super healthy plant, it will not require insecticides or fungicides or any of the other sides to survive. It can stand on its own because it is so healthy. Now let's go up the ladder. So basically this ladder has its base in healthy soil, and then we go up. If we have healthy soils, we'll have healthy plants. Now if we move on up, we get to the next rung of the ladder basically, which is insects. And it's very, very closely related to animals. So if you have plants that are not healthy, they're not well suited to that soil, you'll have insects and diseases beginning to attack that plant. They're not a bad thing. Basically what they're telling you is that this plant is well suited as food for this rung of the food chain, right? So if a plant is not very healthy, what happens is its complex sugars decrease. The cell walls decrease in thickness. This makes it very easy for insects and disease to attack and consume that plant. And it's great. It's great. Basically, it's saying this plant has reached its maximum potential in the food chain, so we get to feed on it. It's well suited for us. It's our food. That's essentially what it's doing. And also, it's removing that plant from the ecosystem and turning it back down into nutrients for the soil, for the biology, so that it can have another go at it and feed the soil. It's a beautiful little loop here. You know, and if a plant dies, it goes back into this cycle and back into your soil to provide those nutrients. Now, if you wish to avoid insects, create food, or grow food, I should say, that is not well suited to insects or diseases. How do you do that? Back to the healthy soil. You must have soil that grows a plant that's so healthy, has a thick wall on the outside, and has high Brix levels. That's how we measure the complex sugars in plants. If the Brix level is high enough, insects cannot feed on the plant. They simply cannot. It will kill them to feed on that plant, because an insect has a very, very simple digestive system. Some insects have a simpler digestive system than others. For instance, aphids are very, very easy to get rid of by simply improving the Brix levels in our plants. They get a tummy ache and they just go away. And if that's all they have to eat, they will literally die. It will kill them because their digestive system is not strong enough to handle that. And that's how you control insects and diseases. If you have plants that have insects or diseases feeding on them and damaging them, you know that you have a deeper problem. The insects and the disease are not the problem. They're the symptom of the problem. Look further down. You have to look at your soil if that's the case. Now, let's say we have plants that are actually healthy and they ward off the insects and diseases. Now we move up the food chain to animals and humans. These are the plants that should be consumed by animals and humans. Now, the reason we have humans at the top of the food chain is because we are the managers, the keepers. In the book of Genesis, God talks about it, how he created everything. And if you look at the story, it starts at the bottom. There's water and atmosphere, then there's soil, and then everything is created out of that. Until finally, on the sixth day, he created humans, and he gave us dominion. He said, be fruitful and multiply, have dominion on earth and subdue it. That does not mean to rape and pillage everything below us. Not by any stretch of the imagination. That means to have a symbiotic relationship and care for it, because if we don't care for it, we suffer. If we don't care for this soil and the microbes in the soil and everything above it, then we are the ones that ultimately pay the price. Insects will probably thrive, and they'll probably eat all the plants, and there will be nothing left for us because it's all well suited to insects. Animals will begin to die. We don't have them as a food source because they don't have healthy food, and ultimately it hurts us. So as the crowning jewel of creation, we are given the responsibility to steward all of it in a symbiotic way. That does not mean that we need to take care of it, but we don't get anything out of it. It means that everything is there for our support, but we must care for it and be responsible stewards. Unfortunately, the reason that we have so many insects and are spraying so many insecticides, the reason we have so many diseases and are spraying so many fungicides and that kind of thing, is because we have been, in a sense, raping and pillaging. We've been applying high salt fertilizers because it's easy. Because we can put that on and take stuff off and sell it for a profit rather than truly caring for the soil and being gentle with it. A lot of this is simply a lack of understanding. So, we're not going to throw everyone under the bus. But we can do better, and we must do better. So let's talk about how this impacts animals and humans. Think of it this way. You would not kill an animal and eat its food. You wouldn't kill a cow and eat its food just so you could eat its food, right? No, that's that's messed up. I would never kill my dog to eat his dog food, right? That's messed up. You wouldn't kill a baby and drink its milk. No, we eat what's well suited to us. So here's the question. Why on earth are we killing insects and disease and eating their food? That, in my opinion, is diabolical. And it's why we have so many health issues. When we eat food that has been treated with insecticides and the other sides, we are basically settling for food that is far, far beneath us. We should not be consuming it. Our digestive systems were created to handle complex sugars, and that's what our body thrives on. And instead, we're eating all these simple sugars. It's not healthy for us. If a plant is so unhealthy that God's ecosystem is attempting to take it out of the system below the ladder from us, that's a red flag. That is telling us, don't eat that food. That's supposed to be recycled from this level right here and returned. Instead, get stuff, eat food that climbs up the ladder, whether that's your cabbage that you're eating directly, the plant that is healthy, whether you're eating that or eating the animal that is eating healthy plants. Now, animals and humans are very similar in that our digestive systems are similar. So good, healthy food for animals is also good, healthy food for humans. Now, I personally don't go out and graze on fields. I just don't do that. I don't know that it would agree with me a whole lot. It might be possible, and I'm not dissing vegetarians here by any means. If you feel like that's what you should do, then go for it. But there is also a reason that God gave us permission to eat animals after the flood. Animals actually go out and they accumulate nutrients from a big variety of plants that we don't typically eat. And then they condense that into a form and they offer that to us. Now, there again, we have a symbiotic relationship with all of creation, but in particular with animals. You know, we care for them. We make sure that they're healthy, that they're fed and watered. We give them what they need, and in return, they give us abundantly. And then we have the humans at the top here, and we've spoken about that considerably. I truly believe that the way God intended things to be is that healthy food grown in healthy soil is, I shouldn't say a medicine, it negates the need for medicine. And if you look at our ag culture right now, especially in the United States, it is horrific what we're doing. At every point, we are damaging our soils. We're killing the microbiology. Actually, a lot of the macrobiology is gone out of soils. Nutrients are being tied up in the soil. It's not that the soil does not have nutrients in it. It's that those nutrients are not available because we don't have any microbiology in there to break that down. It's a little bit like eating food, putting it in our stomach and our gut, and if we have no microbiology, it actually becomes almost like a toxin, and the body must get rid of it. Now, many of the things that are used to control weeds, to control insects and diseases, which are caused by microbes that are out of balance, all of those things are actually killing microbes, not only in our soil, but on the plants as well, which means that when we consume that food, there is no microbiology there to empower our gut to break down that food. Our gut, in and of itself, cannot digest food. It does not digest food. It has a symbiotic relationship with microbiology, in particular bacteria. Now, anytime that we spray, let's say glyphosate, for instance. Glyphosate is actually a antibiotic. That's what it does. And it also prevents the uptake of certain, or the creation of certain enzymes. The way that it works to kill plants is it actually starves the plant. It doesn't just, I don't know how you would say, it just kill it. It actually starves it to death by blocking the creation of certain very, very important enzymes within that plant in what they call the shikimate pathways. And I don't understand a whole lot about that, but when that happens, it means that we don't get those enzymes in our food. They're simply unavailable because of the glyphosate. And unfortunately, a lot of our food has glyphosate in it, which then blocks the creation of enzymes in our gut, which are very, very impactful. So now let's talk a little bit about the cycle here. Here we see the nutrients moving up through the food chain. And if there's not sufficient nutrients at this point, the insects take it out and it goes back. Then there's more nutrients here. Animals are great at accumulating those nutrients from a multitude of sources. Animals do much, much better if they're on like a multi-species cover crop or are being fed a huge variety of plants. Our fascination with monocropping is not healthy for animals. We feed them hay, and then we give them some grain and maybe some molasses. Animals do much, much better if they have a variety of different plants that are providing slightly different nutrient profiles so that the animal can be fully healthy and get all of those nutrients. Now, we have those nutrients from the animals, which gives us a huge variety, are moving up to us as humans. And then from every part of this food chain, we recycle it, through our bodies that die, through our poop. I'm going to call a spade here. The same way with animals. All of those things are meant to go back and feed the microbiology at the bottom of the food chain. And so it becomes this beautiful symbiotic relationship where it's cycling through. The same way with the water. It falls down and then it goes up through a plant, evaporates, and goes back up into the clouds. It's wonderful. Also, I should mention that it has a symbiotic relationship with the microbiology. Where you have healthy soil and lots of plants growing and plenty of those root exudates, you have healthy microbiology that's respirating. It's breathing in and out of the soil. As it does that, some of those microbes actually leave the soil and go up into the atmosphere, and they are actually the ones that seed clouds. They seed clouds more than dust does. Something that we don't understand super well at this point, but essentially what it is doing is it's a form of communication, and that communication goes very, very deep. I spoke very briefly about the communication between plants and microbiology, but there's also communication between the microbiology and the clouds, because where you have healthy plants growing and thriving, you also have microbiology that is sending these signals up into the atmosphere and is attracting rain so that rain can fall back on that healthy soil that's growing and abundant. God created all of creation to be incredibly abundant, but it's never wasteful. And that's one of the number one rules that we should be following in all of our lives. Abundance, but no waste. And in reality, being wasteful is a sign that we don't believe in abundance. If we truly believe in abundance, then we will be careful with our resources. We won't be wasteful with them. We will value them and use them to the best of our abilities. So that kind of wraps up this little lesson. I do plan to do a series of videos that talks about the elements of a healthy soil, and we'll explore all of those ideas in another video. But thank you so much for joining, for sharing this time with me. Thank you for taking the time. In summary, I would say soil health does impact you. We have damaged our soils, not beyond repair, but we have damaged our soils significantly. There are ways to improve the soil. There are many ways, and we can turn that paradigm around very, very quickly. And that paradigm that we're in right now of unhealthy soils and lack and limitation throughout the food chain can very, very quickly be turned around, and we can actually create healthy soils. We can create healthy plants, healthy food, which will then impact our health, and we can become abundant. We can go out, be fruitful, and multiply and replenish the earth. That means so much more than just reproducing as humans. It means being fruitful in everything that we do, being abundant, replenishing the earth, the life in the earth. So I would encourage you, if you can't grow your own food, find someone who is following healthy soil practices and get your food from them. It may be a little more expensive than the cheap food in the grocery stores, but it is actually food that is fit for us as the sons and daughters of the Most High God. It is food that is fit for us, not for the insects. Nothing against insects, but we are the crowning jewel of creation, and we need to act like it. So I would encourage you, it is far, far more cost effective to go and buy more expensive food that is actually food fit for you than it is to pay for drugs and all of those things from our failing health system to mask symptoms. Instead, this is the way to have true health, not simply to hide the symptoms. So I hope this was beneficial. If you would like, hit that subscribe button, share this video with someone, and hopefully we can inspire people. Our mission here at BioReGenesis is to help people regain their health. BioReGenesis literally means life renewed. We want to observe nature and follow God's plan for health so that us as humans can actually be free from the burden of illness and sickness as much as humanly possible here on this earth. So God bless you. Feel free to come back for the other videos in this series. I look forward to sharing those with you and really delving into what makes healthy soil. And then I'll also be doing some videos about how all of these things pertain to the spiritual realm as well. How all of these things are simply analogies and are part of a fractal universe that shows us greater truths in the unseen realm, because they teach us in this earth school where we can see these things. All right, be blessed, be fruitful, multiply, let there be life.